Namaskar and welcome to DGI with Sree and Sree. Today is the 25th of August, Tuesday, and this is episode number 232. Here are the main points. The ISIS threat emerges, and we discussed some looming threats in our previous episodes. There's more today. Afghan deadline stays. The United States is going to leave on the 31st of August, if not sooner. Inconsistent G7 statements between Biden and the leaders demonstrate emerging differences. Russia seems to be emerging from the shadows and arriving as the leader, filling the void. In global news, the global headlines have been dominated by Afghan and COVID issues. The US has an update on Afghanistan, and this is not something that will gladden anyone's heart. Biden addresses another meaningless press conference and walks away. To know more about this, let's go over to Sridhar Chityala ji. Sridhar ji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskar, good morning to everybody, and on this bright Wednesday morning. We had our press briefing on whether there's going to be an extension sought with the Taliban from the August 31st deadline. Everybody accepts and recognizes that the August 31st is a pretty difficult deadline to meet and to get people across, whosoever is left behind. There was also a G7 meeting yesterday, and following that meeting, Biden, the much-awaited Biden press conference came. The amazing truth is he kicks off the meeting talking about his $3.5 trillion spending bill, which is namely, the great harmonization of United States. So he talks about the social spend and social, equality. And he calls it as, build back better. So if Make America Great Again was Trump's, it seems like, build back better, which is borrow money like nobody's business and start making distributions and tax all those people from corporates to small businesses to individuals to fund this exercise. And then he doesn't stop there. Then he goes on to talk about a little bit on the climate before he gets to the Afghanistan issue. Almost dismissive, recognizing this is the single most thing that is dominating the world at the moment, with many people stranded, and already one can witness persecutions and executions going on in Afghanistan. And Afghanistan has not moved an inch. This is what he has communicated. He is not changing the deadline from August 31st, and deadline is not changeable. So it remains to be seen how he deals with the issue.
And in the middle of all this, the CIA head meets Taliban leader in a secret meeting in Kabul. And Ben Sass urges Biden to tell Taliban, we are getting our people out however long it takes. Damn the deadline. House Republicans demand answers from Defense Secretary on the US military equipment that has been seized by Taliban. And John Kirby, for the second time, acknowledges that Al-Qaeda and its affiliates, ISIS, are in Afghanistan, contradicting President Biden. A lot of messaging coming, some not consistent, some within the administration. Sridharji, how do you see this thing? Does US have the wherewithal to take everybody out by 31st August?
Well, based on all the numbers that you are saying, I don't believe that United States has the capacity. The reasons being that many of the people may not be able to make it to the airport because there is no clear passage created by the Taliban. There's no corridor that has been created for the safe travel. That's one. Number two, there are several checkpoints and people are being, thoroughly checked and validated. Now we are hearing that those with these SIV, special immigrant visas, are being denied and they're being sent back. And included amongst that is people like doctors and so on and so forth who are granted the visas, and they're all being denied. So the question, therefore, is the number that is estimated is between 11,000 to 15,000 Americans to be in Kabul or in Afghanistan, of which only 4,000 have been evacuated. So you have between 7 and 11,000, depending on whose numbers you are counting. So between 7 to 11,000 there are no signs. Many of the aircrafts, evacuation aircrafts are coming back with mostly people flooded with Afghans who seem to have come into the airport. Whether they were validated, tested, we don't know, and that is why there's going to be multiple points. So all these people who are coming in are basically Afghans who either carry visas or who don't have visas. They are able to make the aircraft who are coming in. Close to 70,000 people have come into the country or been evacuated from Afghanistan. Many of them are in various locations and from where they will be checked and brought into the United States.
Sir, one question on what you just mentioned. You said that some people with the SIV are not being allowed.
Yeah.
Is it by the US or by the Taliban forces inside Afghanistan?
Taliban is now saying you have no business to go back. Doesn't matter. We don't care about these visas. So go back.
And there are about 4,600 US forces still left, and the drawdown has started. All US citizens and permanent residents and refugees are being checked at various intermediate points. And Liz Cheney, in her interviews, expresses that the exit agreement more looks like a surrender agreement. We should remember that Liz Cheney is a Republican, but not aligned with Trump's group. US plans to scrape or scrap use of bases, or I don't know, US plans to scrape use of bases on Korea and Japan for refugees. Sir, can you expand on the last line item, also the other ones?
So US originally had contemplated to use Korean and Japanese air bases as a potential intermediate points to house the refugees, conduct the test and validation of their visa status and security, and then ship them into United States. That was the point. So they are abandoning or scraping their plans to use Korea and Japan. I don't know for whatever reasons they have decided to make this specific change. Remember, Japan also offered, like Singapore also offered, one plane to go in and bring people not directly from Kabul, but from one of these intervening points, like be it in Germany, be it in France, be it in Spain, be it in Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, any of these places where the United States has access to, including Doha. So I think that is what the last sentence means. I do want to go back and say one important point. If you recall, we had mentioned in Daily Global Insights, Mr. William Burns, the CIA head, visiting Pakistan for 2 days and then coming back. And then yesterday, he had meeting, according to all the reports, he had meeting with the head of the new incoming administration in Taliban, if I have to use the phrase, in Kabul. Now, one of the things that was mentioned and then it just subtly disappeared is that there is a looming threat after August 31st. And the word that is used is either from Al-Qaeda or ISIS. So, and you can see that John Kirby has made a statement, which is to say that, no, Al-Qaeda is present. He didn't use the word ISIS, but Al-Qaeda is present and other terrorist forces are present in Afghanistan right now. This contradicts with Biden. The reason why I'm connecting the sequence of events is one of the points that was mentioned by people yesterday is that the reason why they're uncomfortable to extend August 31st is because there is imminent security threat. Imminent security threat from whom? We don't know. But the intelligence input says that there is imminent security threat. Whether it's got anything to do with 2 visits of Mr. William Burns, who is the CIA, or anyone else, we don't know. So, which is why there is hesitancy.
And there has been some activity in and around Taiwan. China's is sending some ferry boats and so on and so forth. In what appears to be preparation for some sort of invasion at Taiwan. We have the graphic up on the screen. Sridhar ji, please take it away.
Well, I think China recognizes that they need to do a ground invasion. It's not just going to be, you can bomb Taiwan and then occupy. So you need to send your forces, your people to forcefully take over a nation, very similar to Hong Kong. Hong Kong is small, but Taiwan is a large country and large landmass. So China has now started to mobilize civilian ferries and is now doing invasion drills. So the civilian ferries will be used basically to do a ground assault and ground landing, backed by their helicopters and other ships, helicopters landing in main parts of the island. Obviously using the naval vessels. So it looks like China has sensed its moment of opportunity, and it was always there to unify China into one single institution, one single country that includes Tibet, Hong Kong, and Taiwan, and whatever territories that they can grab anywhere else. That seems to have been the broad strategic agenda of the Chinese Communist Party. So if Taiwan is taken over, then Xi Jinping will go down as the greatest Chinese warrior and leader who has accomplished what they set out 70 years ago. It seems very much they're on the move because the world is polarized, and you have an abject kind of leadership in United States, or lack of leadership in United States. To add to this, you take a look at Madam Harris. Where did she go? She lands in Singapore. She has some meetings. We'll discuss that in a second. And then you have, she's going to Vietnam and not to Taiwan. Taiwan is the flashpoint. And she's conspicuously missing, and not being there is not sending a very positive signal by way of what China is attempting to do, and by way of what Taiwan wants.
And to add to what you just said, Sridharji, the United States has a military base in Taiwan, so it is not going to be as easy as just walking over. So this is going to be just the beginning. We will, keep you updated. As always, we are the tip of the spear. And let's take a look at Afghanistan again. Taliban executed civilians, recruited child soldiers, the UN rights chief warns. Videos emerging of killing and executions of those who were left behind and helped the US and allies. Over 5,000 prisoners released, and already signs of other terrorist groups entering Afghanistan is being seen. And Taliban is denying and informing US that Afghan elite should not leave and will not be allowed to. And Taliban is also informing and announcing that all Afghans attempting to leave must return home and leave the airport. Staying beyond the 31st August has potential security threats to US troops, like you mentioned. And the women's soccer players leave Afghanistan in one of the evacuation flights. Sir, Afghanistan, is Taliban talking something and doing something else? What is your feeling?
Taliban seems to be very precise in what they're doing, which is namely they've come in, they've occupied, they are sticking to the August 31st deadline. They've taken over the administration. Effectively, they have told the transitional government that was contemplated as part of the agreement is not acceptable to them. They have made that, and they've made sure. And you saw Mr. Ashraf Ghani fleeing the country. You saw the Afghan forces laying down their arms and surrendering within a day or 2 days or 3 days, whichever way you want to count. They have released releasing the political prisoners, or what are they called, the prisoners. That was one of their agenda. They have released all of them. They wanted to establish the Islamic tenet, and which they are doing, and they'll shortly be announcing the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. So they're going about what they set out and what they have indicated with precision. They have taken over, thanks Mr. Biden and the US Army, and basically taken over the entire kit and caboodle on the arms side. And we listed out various equipment from helicopters to winged aircraft to artillery to guns to mobile vehicles and so on and so forth, which we set out yesterday. So all those things has been taken over. There are some reports that some of these aircraft and helicopters may not be what you call operational. And some of them, I'm told that the Afghan forces were told in the event of such a situation, they should immobilize them. But whether they did so or not, we don't know. But some of them were done by the US forces. So very clearly that Taliban is not only Taliban is executing its plan, but it is in front of the world media communicating what they're doing.
And let's take a look at what transpired at the G7 briefing. Biden informs G7 leaders that the extension of August 31st is not feasible. The G7 will be united in their efforts in addressing the refugee needs. The G7 leaders pledge unity on sanctions and recognition of Taliban government. Johnson says G7 leaders all agreed that deadline must be extended to accommodate all departures after August 31st. And efforts are being made, and US is in in communication with Taliban to get all of them evacuated. Staying beyond 31st has potential security threats, and Nigel Farage has minced no words in making his point and lists three areas of failure. US is not trustable, and he consulted no one, that is Biden, in setting the August 31st deadline. And Biden has put many Americans and allies and others to be potentially left behind. So if the agreement originally that is signed by Trump called for complete evacuation by a certain date, how can one fault Biden? I'm playing the devil's advocate here. He had to leave by that date. That the feeling on the ground was that these guys will just destroy them.
Right. I think it's a great question. Nobody wants to speak about it. Mr. Trump's agreement was May 31st, not August. Okay, to start with. Now, the person who had an exit plan was President Trump, and his exit plan speaks about evacuating the civilians and other contract and support staff and the embassy diplomatic staff first. Second, the equipment moves. The third is the army. So therefore, that is his execution and exit plan. And he's advised by people, and he's willing to change as he did in Syria in terms of the withdrawal. That is what Trump is saying. And that's Trump's plan. Mike Pompeo has been very vocal. Lindsey Graham has been very vocal about this. These are the two big people as far as the military diplomacy and plans go overseas. Now, what did Biden do? Biden extended it from May, not to August 31st, but recall that September 11th, 9/11. And every one of us, including we reported in DGI, the choice of 9/11 as the final time to get out, we all critiqued it, the choice of the time. Then this August 31st seems to have loomed. What precisely made him to agree to August 31st? What precisely made him to reprioritize the sequence, wherein the army left first, some of them switching off the the airport lights and leaving in the night, taking the Afghan forces by surprise, and then you are now beginning to see the consequences of that. So therefore, who made the decision? Clearly, there seems to be inconsistencies between the State Department and also the inconsistencies with the Defense Department. They seem to be, when you see these people, John Kirby or Antony Blinken or Jack Sullivan, making these statements, and sometimes they contradict themselves, you find that there is no synchronization. There's one person who seems to have made this decision, not taking any of the intelligence input.
And in other global news, Vice President Kamala Harris calls for stronger supply chain coordination with ASEAN leaders. Vice President Harris arrives in Vietnam after 3 hours delay in Singapore over anomalous health incident, often referred to as Havana syndrome. It's no longer Hamas or Palestine, but Iran that is at the centerpiece of the Biden-Naftali Bennett discussions. And Russia hosts Jordan and hints at a UAE deal, and Nigeria pounded by spread of sectarian killing. Sridharji, first let's take a look at the upcoming meeting between Naftali Bennett and Biden, and also you already touched upon Vice President Harris's visit. So let's start with the Naftali Bennett Biden meeting. So Israel is now taking the stand that Iran is just days away from enriching the uranium. What do you think is going to happen? I mean, there's lots of activity right now in that area. The Three Eyes are active as heck. And also now the Sahel region, like we mentioned, is also seeing some action. Is it all, I mean, is this like, the cat sleeping, therefore all the rats are running around? What do you make of it?
There's no cat. There's only rats. I'll start with that. Okay, there's no cat. Cat looks like a rat, so therefore it is part of the rats. Now, as far as the first meeting between Mr. Naftali Bennett, the Prime Minister of Israel, he has arrived. He's in Washington, D.C. The entire focus of the discussions is going to be Mr. Bennett is going to judge. Remember, he is the former head of IDF. He was a defense minister. So he understands the domain, he understands the terrain very, very well, and he's considered to be very, very hawkish in terms of the integrity and unity of Israel as one single institution or one single country. So the discussion is going to revolve around what is it that you are dialoguing with Iran? Why do you believe that any settlement with Iran is going to be any kind of deterrent in terms of activity against Israel emanating from not just Iran, but Iran surrogates in Iraq, Iran surrogates in Lebanon, Iran surrogates in Syria, and Iran surrogates in Gaza? So why do you believe that you believe that this deal that you are negotiating has any relevance when both IAEA as well as United Nations and other countries have indicated these fellows are well beyond the point of return? So I think that's going to be the focus of the discussions. If I'm correct, or if my assessment and reading is correct, then basically Mr. Bennett is going to walk away understanding where he stands from a U.S. point of view. I don't think he needs very, very much evidence. He is seeing what's going on in Afghanistan, and you have seen Japan has woken up. You have seen, Taiwan is waking up or already woken up. So he's going to go back with that input and let's forget about Hamas, forget about Gaza, forget about Lebanon. Tell me what you're doing about, what are you going to do about Iran, and what's the control that you have on Iran? I think that's the message that is going to be the point of discussion. He's going to go back internalizing to himself what plans he needs to make if he needs to be all by himself standing to defend against any imminent threats looming from Iran.
And let's take a look at United States news. House Democrats clear path towards passing the $3.5 trillion budget reconciliation bill infrastructure plan. The coincidental timing of Pfizer vaccine approval. Dr. Fauci says he's seeing light at the end of the pandemic tunnel by next spring. And Martha Vineyard Hospital post the Obama bash overrun by COVID-19 cases. And Pfizer CEO predicts vaccine-resistant COVID-19 is going to likely emerge soon. So all this around COVID, let's start with what happened at Martha's Vineyard. There was a weekend party at Obama's residence, sir. What really happened there?
I think there was a Obama birthday party. It is, I believe, videos have emerged, notwithstanding the fact the videos were not allowed to be taken, that there was no masking. And then what has happened is there's tremendous amount of criticism. You have mask on in public policies, parties. You got to be very careful. This has happened, and then slowly it has emerged that the COVID. It looks like people were not, as I say, common man here. One rule for one rule for another, right? So they say Democrats say they're non-elitist, but their behavior doesn't seem to reflect that. So if you want to go into a party, if you want to go into a restaurant, you're supposed to show whether you are vaccinated, whether you have evidence that you are normal. So only then you are allowed, at least mask on and vaccinated, two elements of proof required to enter. But doesn't seem to have been the case. So there is looming in the background. So COVID-19 case, Martha's Vineyard is a very small place. So it is possible that they have got more cases that they can handle, and that is what the press is reporting, basically to push back at Mr. Biden to say you are enacting policies, but your own, former colleagues are not following that.
And the one information that really is scary is the Pfizer CEO's statement that a vaccine-resistant COVID-19 could emerge in the near future. What that means is that it doesn't matter how many times you take the vaccine shot, the virus itself has morphed itself into a different form that is going to still attack you. Sridharji, what is the status on all the different virological laboratories in China? There were like 45 last count. I heard some news that the Wuhan lab was closed. Is it closed or is it still functional? What really is going on? Any idea, sir?
I think China's information flow. One has to be trusting one's foot to leave on water and assume that your foot doesn't go in. Very similarly, the news that comes out from China, how much you can trust, we don't know. So there's mixed messages. If you recall, Wuhan was shut down. If you recall that there was a tremendous outflow of the spread of the epidemic or pandemic. But then the news got shut down. That spread into Southeast China. That also got suppressed. Now, China is one of the places when you look at the global COVID tracker, you all can go and look. It's somewhere in the 100th or 110th amongst the 160 plus nations is there, which is to say everything is hunky-dory, contrary to what's happening there. So the news is very skeptical. So to your point, which is namely, we don't have any credible news coming out. And what they're doing, they're allowing, even many airports in the world are allowing as though there is no virus in China. There's nothing, it's open, it's contained. So I think that's the situation, what we know of in public domain. We don't know what is the intelligence, on the background.
And in India news, India adopts a wait and watch policy for Afghanistan. India, Russia form bilateral channel for consultation on Afghanistan. UNHRC meets on Afghanistan and India expresses concern on Pakistani terror groups. And India rescues 78 more people from Afghanistan, bringing the total to 800. India is actively involved in helping not only its, but also the other nations which are asking it for help in evacuation. I read somewhere that Nepalis, Bangladeshis, and many other countries who have asked for help from India have all been accommodated. India is doing a great job taking people out of harm's way, sir.
I think we reported yesterday in DGI that Sri Lanka, Nepal, and Bangladesh have reached out to India. On the contrary, they have some kind of a partnership with China as well. They've reached out to India to rescue them out. Let's look at one important piece of news. Two pieces here, right? One, Russia-India forms a special channel to coordinate efforts in Afghanistan. We skip this for the want of time, but go back to the world news. You find Russia receives Jordan, Russia receives UAE. So you can see Russia slowly but surely filling the gap and orchestrating its efforts in terms of how to coordinate various activities, be it geostrategic or be it geospecific from a political point of view and security point of view, which is Afghanistan. So that's my very important observation. And the second one, which I would like to UNSC, in UNSC, India made its point very clear that they have clear evidence that there are terrorist forces operational in Afghanistan, most notably various names, various wings from Pakistan. Remember, in G7, as well as Mr. Biden have said, one of the conditions, you talked about the agreement, one of the points of agreement is that Afghanistan soil will not be used as the launch pad for global terrorists. They've already violated that.
So this is again, Taliban just says to heck with whatever we agreed to. Now we are in power. We are going to do whatever we want to. Now, this kinds of stuff also has a way of blowing back on their current supporters, which happen to be China and Pakistan. So we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. And in Make in India efforts, India hands over the first batch of multi-mode homemade grenades to Indian Army. Consistent with the monetization and reinvestments approach, Indian Railways to monetize about 1.125 lakh crores of assets during the term fiscal year 2022 to 2025, and Indian mobile phone exports grew 250% in the April to June period to about 4,600 crores. And India to target and expand manufacturing exports from US 229 billion to US 350 to 380 billion over the next 5 years. And India has vaccinated close to 599 million doses, or almost 600. and at 6.15 million for the day as the active cases continue to dip. The latest number is 319,351. Sridharji, taken together, there are two things there. One is India is really pushing hard for exports, which is an excellent sign. The other is that India is able to control the COVID incidents and also being able to vaccinate the population, one of the highest populations ever vaccinated. China is not releasing its numbers, so we cannot guess what exactly is going on. So your thoughts?
I think if you look at it in a geopolitical context, you can see there are, if you take PPP as a measure, India, China, United States, China, and India are in the top three, right, on the
Right.
PPP basis.
Right, purchasing power parity. Yeah,
exactly. So you take a look at India as a strategic vantage point. It is trying to use this time window to build its exports, sell non-core assets, rebuild its industry, retune its industry. Its intent is not to replace China. Its intent to build its own economy to be a strong and resurgent economy and to be 5 trillion, 10 trillion nominal GDP. So India's focus is very much around protecting its territory and protecting its resources, and also to expand its economic footprint. Now, we take China. China is saying there is a vacuum. This is the time for me to have occupation, and this is the time for me to exert my authority explicitly. South China Sea, Taiwan, Hong Kong, across the Himalayan region, Africa, you name. So they have a very different perspective as they move towards the next phase of their positioning in the global order. Now come to United States. United States is saying, I'm no longer a power. My only objective is to come back, and basically, borrow the money to the heck of it, and to start doing social distribution by punishing those who work, but to give money to all these people who need money without an economic agenda in the forefront. There is no economic agenda. What you have is redistribution and collecting money through taxes, but not through, there's only three important elements. One is infrastructure, they keep saying, and we have had many infrastructure budgets from going back to Bill Clinton, George Bush, to Bill Clinton, to Obama now, to at least Trump looked at bringing back manufacturing and rebuilding, whereas you're going back to the old renegade in this plan which Biden is coming up with. So you can see the three different approaches that these three countries are taking in these top three economic, by GDP, the top three nations in the world. Japan has just basically subdued. It is today the number 3 by nominal GDP. EU is almost passive. We don't know whether Britain is the leader, whether France is the leader, or Germany is saying, I'm no longer the leader, I'll follow whatever everybody else does. So you can see how the shift in power is taking place. Don't forget Russia. Russia is always maintained its shadow position. It will come in and make sure its interests are protected, and it always has a seat at the table. It only does things within its borders. It doesn't do things outside its borders. I mean, that is Belarus and Ukraine and adjacent nations included. So it's very interesting when I take a look at what India is doing related to what China is doing and related to what is going on here right in the United States.
And let's take a look at markets now. The Standard & Poor and NASDAQ finish at record highs ahead of the Fed summit. Oil prices snap back on the back of positive news of demand pickup, including China. And economy could be helping from the positive news on the Delta variant. Sridharji, what is the positive news on the Delta variant? And then you can go over the numbers, sir.
The positive news is that basically for example, India seems to be, which is one of the large, what you call GDP nations. So India seems to be in a containment mode from a consumer point of view, consumer spend point of view. That it's still by PPP, it is number 3, but by nominal GDP, it's 5th or 6th, depending on which day you look at it. So you see that there is some, Europe seems to be in control to some extent, and they are accepting the fact that the pandemic is here and have to deal with it. Asia still has problems, but the most powerful economy in today's context is United States. United States, what it's saying is that the Fauci yesterday made a statement that we can see the light at the end of the tunnel by spring next year. So they're saying that there seems to be at least someone making a statement that we have the mechanism to control. And they announced the booster dose to go in by September 20. So people are buying into that news, and therefore they feel that they can go ahead and spend their money. Now, of course, the passing of the approval of the twin towers of massive spend, which is one is the infrastructure, which is 1.2 trillion, and then the budget, which is 3.5 trillion, at least to start with right now, the framework for the budget, that's a reconciliation only, which means it's almost guaranteed if Biden passes, and this is Biden's economic agenda. This is what is giving confidence. There's going to be plenty of money coming into vast number of sections of the people. We don't need to worry the source of money. It is going to be borrowed. And that's what is giving the momentum and confidence to people to say, okay, we can spend.
And let's put up the markets data, please, so Sridharji can touch upon it. Sir, take it away. We have the data on screen.
Okay, the Dow is up, as you can see, marginally up 30 points. It's at 35,000. S&P is up 44. They're all in record highs. They are reaching their threshold points. Look at oil. Oil grew. We told that the oil price, the futures grew. Today we saw that the spot prices moved. So oil has moved, the crude has moved by almost $2.64. Brent has moved by about $3 to $4. It's $71. And there is a chart which we'll show in a second. The 10-year bonds, the rates fixed. This is the other indication, 1.29%. The rates remain low, and that means people can borrow still and, be it invest for businesses or invest for buying in the homes. The crypto always toggles. It was 50,000. It's back to 48. We continue to show this because this is clearly a new asset class that is emerging. And there's a number of countries now accepting that there is a denominated digital currency that is coming, be it sovereign or be it business, be it commercial, whichever way one looks at it, that is the indication of this Bitcoin, Ethereum numbers.
And there's the screen, the West Texas Intermediate Futures screen.
Yeah.
So please go ahead. Yeah.
So you saw the WTI numbers, which we have been productive. There is crude, and then the WTI Brent crude, which is $67 to $65 on Wednesday. On Thursday, it went up from 63 to 65, and then on Friday to Monday, it dipped to $62. We said that's a good sign. And then you see again a sudden step up function, and we are back past 67. We are at $71 as we speak. So this is probably the much needed momentum which the oil industry, energy industry was expecting, the price blip. That also shows that there is a surge in demand in various countries, a reflection of economic activity back. And China is leading the way in the consumption on the demand side of the ledger. So these are all the points, which is namely that, we are getting control of COVID. We have vaccines now. We have boosters now. People are revving up that we are seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what is giving the impetus to the markets.
And with that, we bring to an end today's segment of DGI. We'll be back again tomorrow. Namaskar. And please do link to share and join our membership. And thank you very much again, Sridharji. We'll be back tomorrow. Namaskar.
Thank you. Namaskar. Have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.